talking classical stuff, and just to prove to you that I know one or two things about poetry beyond Bob Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel, who to the other
Also
most
poets.
wonderful
Also
poets
poets, yeah.
of all time. And Francis Thompson, I don't know how much you know about his poetry. He was active as a poet in the late 1800s to even the early 1900s.
Okay.
And Bishop of London called his poem "The Hound of Heaven."
There's a funny I've got a like you know when you're like, I don't know the poet and I don't know the poetry, but I've got a piece of my brain that's currently
Oh, it's
niggling me
niggling
now, where I'm
you.
like,
Well,
there's
let me
something
talk a
there's
little
something
more and
interesting
see
about
what
him.
you
Yeah.
say. So he, the Bishop of London, called his poem "The Hound of Heaven" one of the most tremendous poems of all time. The
Oh,
Bishop of
okay.
London at the time, in
Okay.
the late 1800s, and he, his wonderful body of work, uh, which developed into quite religious poetry, even in the late 1800s.
I think I remember why I remember his name.
Yeah,
I remember his name.
he wrote it over a very short space of time when he stayed in a cottage on the Thames near Charing Cross.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, so that is my fact. He throughout his life, he mostly wrote during that little sojourn in a cottage.
So just of what, like a few years?
Yeah, a couple of years.
So
Charing
he's like a
Cross.
famous poet, but he only wrote for a few years of his life.
Yeah,
I used to
Francis
catch
Thomas.
the train to, because I used to live in the
Really?
southeast of London, so I used to catch a train to Charing Cross Station
Yes.
quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's Charing Cross Station itself is it was a waypoint for the body of and I'm trying to remember who, one of the famous queens, I think, whose body was kind of carried to these 12 points around England, and that was the first one.
Oh my.
Yeah, which is why it's called the Charing Cross. But quite aside of that, you know, the reason why I think I remember his name is because I think he's one of the people that the the Jack the Ripper investigators.
Oh my.
Kind of put as being a potential Jack the Ripper.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's him. And I hope, Dietz, if you would please look this up for me, I would appreciate this. I would appreciate this because apparently what's happened is they've lifted clues out of his poems that seem to suggest Francis Thompson. Is that right? Yeah, that seems to suggest that he may be Jack the Ripper. But obviously, listen, there's been a lot of books about who is and who isn't Jack the Ripper. But is it at least the right time? Am I thinking
think
of the
so.
right person?
It's late 1800s, and Jack the Ripper was 1880.
Yeah.
1890. Yes, and he's.
And then what happens to him after those few years? Do you know? Does he go off somewhere?
Yeah, he fell ill, and his publishers took care of him for a little bit.
So perhaps that's the reason why the Ripper killings stopped, you know? I mean, I don't know if Dietz is going to be able to give us the but I, as I say, the second you started saying the names, and then you said his body of work, and I was like, ooh, I think I remember. I remember what it is. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. All right, let me lean into this Ripper theory. Let me take my yes or no entirely based off the fact that he's in the area only for a few years. He's the Ripper, and that's why people think he's the Ripper. And yes, absolutely, it's true.
One day, Warren, I promise you, one day soon, I will tell you the truth.
Oh,
but I've lied again. I'm just having such fun with the lies. I don't know why.
Such a bastard.
It's just such fun. But I was a bit of a dick with my lie construction again, because his Charing Cross sojourn time period was very much not in a luxury cottage on the Thames. He
It's this one of the old, I've changed your tiny detail like that.
Absolutely, you know me so well. He actually studied because his dad forced him medicine at the University of Manchester. It wasn't called Manchester back then. It's now the University of Manchester. But then he ran away penniless just to be a writer to London, and got, because of his nervousness, addicted to
opium.
Yes,
right.
Which he would get at Charing Cross, and he would sleep with the homeless people on the banks of the Thames.
I mean, Charing Cross is, like if you say, oh, there's, it was where you bought opium and there was homeless people. Like now, people would think you were insane because Charing Cross Station is right by Trafalgar Square. Like it's central London. It's probably one of the most expensive pieces of. I stayed there once. I did a comedy gig in London, one weekend, and I stayed in that hotel above Charing Cross. That it was £3,000 a night that the client was paying.
No,
£3,000 a night. That's how expensive. Yeah, that's how expensive that area is now.
£3,000 a night.
£3,000 a night. That's how expensive. Yeah, and the room was tiny, right? And it was as small as your penis. It was very, very, very small. Very small. You needed a microscope to see it, Ryan. So small.
It's like that rooms in at Sun City, and you get the Sun City the Palace, and then you get the Cascades, and then you get the thing, and then you get the Sun City Hotel.
Yeah, and then the garbage closets.
Yeah, you can literally use the loo without leaving the bed. It's that kind of,
yeah, that's what they used to put us up when we did comedy at Sun City. Like, oh, you get a free room. Wonderful, wonderful.
Nice. There's nowhere to put my suitcase.
If you can't fit in, you just call the front desk and they'll come with a crowbar and they'll wedge you in and close the door behind you.
And plus you have to spoon with Malcolm Ferreira, which is
anyway, okay, all right. But yeah, so now for you to say that it's the place of the homeless and the opium addicts back in the day is crazy.
And also what's quite beautiful is he felt existentially that in the bottom of the bottom that he was saved by God.
Okay.
Although it really was a prostitute also helped him rescue him.
What a stereotype.
Cross. Yeah.
What a stereotype. I don't think Dietz is coming through on this.
No, and
Dietz, did you hear us? Nothing on Francis Lindsay and the
Francis Thompson.
I don't know why I got Lindsay there, but Francis Thompson and Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, so the
Oh, there you are. So there
really,
it is indeed him. Yeah.
Francis Thompson.
He
might have been Jack the Ripper.
Might have been Jack
bloody grief.
But, people have written books that basically any major figure from Victorian England who was around at the time could have been the killer. It's been everybody from the Queen's doctor to now poor old Francis Thompson, who was just a regular opium addict.
There was so many prostitutes in Whitehall Chapel. Was it Whitechapel Hall?
Whitechapel, yeah.
Whitechapel. So the other nice thing about him, okay, so the poem The Hound of Heaven is quite lovely. The one that the Bishop of London said was the most tremendous poem of all time. Is a man running away from God, but God just chases him like a hound. I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my mind, and in the midst of tears I hid from him. It's quite beautiful and rhythmical and quite an epic. Even in the days when those epic poems were not to be written, he decided, I'll write an epic thing. That was beautiful. But his poem called The Kingdom of God is quite beautiful. O world invisible, we view the that's how it starts. I can't remember the next line. No. But it does mention that he sees Jacob's ladder, which is that stairway to heaven, pitched twixt heaven and Charing Cross. So that was his moment of being in the pit. And even when he's in the pit, he saw heaven's hand helping him. And he also mentions that, lo, he saw Christ walk in the poem. Lo, Christ walking on the water, not of Gennesareth, but Thames. So not on the lake, sea of So it's quite.
I mean, English people love that,
Yeah.
And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? No, they didn't, you bastard. It's Middle East. That's where he was. He didn't come to England. Stop imagining Jesus in England. It's a very weird and particular thing that English people do.
Oh, well.
Very strange behavior.
Yeah, the Archbishop of Canterbury is, it's a really holy place,
No, of course. They
Canterbury. The Canterbury Tales was Chaucer.
That's
people doing their pilgrimage to Canterbury.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah. So Canterbury was always like the center point of religion in England. But then obviously after King Henry VIII, the Archbishop of Canterbury became like the head of the Church of England. Yeah.